The great Jah Wobble reinvented the bass guitar in the late 70s when he was a spine on the bass line of the legendary and genius Public Image Limited. His bass lines literally wobble the floor.
See, I've got a suntan, nothing else to do. Luckily, I did have a quarantine beard, which I took off 3 days ago.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah, must have pushed
Robinson Crusoe, mate. Robinson Crusoe, I'm telling you. Yeah, yeah. Ridiculous. All like mad Professor Hair, you know, yeah.
Is that what you've been doing in lockdown then, just growing a beard?
Yeah, that was my main thing. First of all, just grow a beard. Well, I'm a lazy sod anyway when it comes. When I was a drinking drug, I used to have the proper George Best thick beards, you know, luxurious kind of big thick beards, you know, because I'd be out on the razzle for a good few days at a time, you know, so I wouldn't shave for 2 or 3 weeks. So I'd have a big thick beard, and that's the longest beard up to 3 was the longest beard I've had since then, maybe even longer than them. It was right down now, you know.
So it's like a classic old actor's grey beard.
Oh, mate, it was beyond. It was Robinson Crusoe. Yeah.
Yeah. And you were just saying you've been so bored, you've even been playing your bass.
Yeah, I've been not only playing bass, sight reading. Can you believe that? Sight reading, which I'm crap at, I'm rubbish. But I just thought, come on, you know, it's another little skill, just helps you get a bit familiar with it, you know, in another kind of way, complete opposite to the intuitive way I learned, you know, myself, you know. So I thought, come on, you know, do a bit of sight reading, you know, a little bit, just practice it. Just something good comes from it. I'm doing Spanish, you know, habla español.
You got any further than that?
I have actually. I can say stuff like reservado una mesa para la cena para dos personas porque es romántico. You know, so yeah, I'm staggering along. Yeah, yeah. So I said, I'm booking a table. I booked a table. If I was going to say book, it'd be reservar. But reservado means I've booked a table for dinner for 2 people because it's romantic. There you go. You know, you lose booking a table seems to be a basic staple of it, John. You know, you know. And una habitación con baño. You know, rooms with baths. Un habitación doble. All that cake. But no, I'm getting there. You know, I want to come out and at least be able to stumble my way through it next time I'm in Spain, if we're ever allowed to travel again. You know,
that's the problem, isn't it? To Spain.
Yeah, yeah.
You're going to be doing a Spanish album, a flamenco.
Well, I already done dub musica, done on the electro dub extravaganza EP. About a year ago now, Record Store Day, I sung a song in Spanish, you know. I always do a little bit. Me gusta mi trabajo, you know, like I always say a little thing on stuff about I like me work and dub música para siempre, you know, and all that. But anyway, it's nonsense, you know. So, yeah, I did that. So there probably maybe there'd be a bit more Spanish stuff, but I just think with the English, we're so useless at learning languages, absolutely useless that you thought, come on, yet again, this is your time. Out of all of them, Spanish is the one. And if you'd say me, why is that? I think because of Tuco, the geezer in the Spanish Mexican, like the baddies in the Clint films. And I just thought they were great, you know. And so that's probably why, you know, when I was a teenager, Clint Eastwood films, and I thought the Mexicans were the coolest, you know. So, you know, I wanted to, that's probably why. Yeah, and maybe Latin maths when I was a kid with the Latin languages. I don't know, you know.
So when you're playing the bass, what you do, you find you're playing different things. I mean, I know you're doing the sight reading thing, but you find you're one.
Yeah. What have I done? What did I do? Sitting on the dock of the bay, which is a bit tricky, but yeah, sitting on a day, some R&B instrumental. I can't remember. That's the 2, and War, Lowrider. Was having a go with that. The Ramones, which I did that. This was the first one I done. God, what tune? God, I've forgotten. I can't remember what tune it was, but anyway, so I tried to mix it up, you know. And the Ramones obviously is pretty easy. It's quite repetitive, and it's all like pedals. You haven't got lots of rests and all that. I don't really got any rests, but yeah, just doing a bit of that, just to kind of, and it gets you into kind of just finding notes quickly on the bass without looking. You know, I'm very much looking at fixed, you know, positions. I was a real basic guy, you know, and I was smart enough to know, don't lose the basics. Keep the basics you've got that you do well. You're paying time with good lines. That's good to start with, you know.
Are you breaking out of playing in the shapes? Because you told me once everything you wrote was in little squares and triangles.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, you get working on your fingering a little bit, you know, because when you got to play looking at notes, then you've got to get your fingering. You know, you can't just, you know, you've got to actually think about your fingering a little bit as well. Especially you've got like fast little runs of triplets or whatever, you know, up tempo stuff. You've got to kind of think about how you're going to get there, because you've got to be looking at it, and your fingers you've got no time to spare in getting your finger. So whereas if you're kind of doing one of your own lines, even one of the tricky ones, you're very familiar with it and you can anticipate, and that if you're sight reading, you've got to be completely on it. That's partly the discipline I did it, just so you get to know it a little bit more, you know. I mean, it might be like, how can I say, if you went away, if you were mad enough to go on holiday with your missus, and you know your missus very well, but then you go and you do a mountain climbing holiday, and you see each other in a different light, because you're displaying your weakness. Actually, it would be a good one, but actually we're both scared of heights. Actually, that would be terrible for us, but you know, it's a bit like you're putting yourself in a kind of a weak position, really, you know. Hang about, John, there's someone at the door.
Yeah, cool, yeah.
I think.
So I'll cut it out. Yeah.
It's all right, me missus has got. There's someone at the door, darling. Oh, right, yeah. But there's no van outside. How weird, because normally the only knocks you get at the door now, it's a delivery, innit, from Amazon or something, you know.
Yeah, it's about one a week, innit? Very nervous looking delivery place.
Oh, it was a tree cutter. That's optimistic, isn't it? Huh? Yeah, it was a would-be tree surgeon.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah. So behind you, I see some paintings. Are these some of your paintings?
Yeah, I mean, I've got my own stuff upstairs. I do like these are just, you know, I suppose some people go, oh God. I went to Jah Wobble's house. It was really chocolate boxy, his art, you know. It's just like Van Gogh, Turner I like, Monet, you know, that kind of stuff. Got a Chinese one over in a corner there, you know, big print. But, yeah, but mainly kind of Turners and Monets, and just I like the first art I got into probably was Impressionist, you know. I've got my own stuff up, but actually a lot of it I've sold. Flea bought one.
Really?
Which I was so honoured. Yeah, I was so honoured. You know, Flea bought one off me. That he saw it. Absolutely, mate. Yeah, you know. And it's great because he liked my bass early on, and he said it would mean a lot to have something that you painted with intensity on. It was a bit Turner. I've been naturally in that Turner. I'm not figurative. Yeah, again, like me bass, I haven't got I have to be straightforward and basic and simple. I've got big navvy's hands, you know. I'm not a little figurative guy or a little slap, you know, careful up the fret, you know. I'm a big meaty, definite beelines kind of a guy. And when I paint, I smear it and I texture it and all that stuff, you know. And I love it. Actually, it's the one thing I haven't done, but I'm going to be doing. Maybe even tonight. I've got some oils which I noticed were quite overpriced. I'd run out, and I noticed that I suppose a lot of the stuff you do at home has gone up in price or something, maybe. But I've got some little canvases, so I'm going to get stuck into it outside. I make a mess, so I get paper spread out everywhere. You know, I haven't got any plastic gloves because I guess that's at a premium now as well nowadays. All that stuff, but you know, yeah. So on the wall here, just in my living room, you know, it's just lots of books and paintings, like say, maybe impressionist kind of stuff. Gives Gauguin over there, print, you know, that kind of stuff. You know. Yeah.
So when, like you say, you're going to do some painting tonight, do you know what you're going to paint before you start? Or this sort of suggestion?
Actually, I do. I've got. Okay, you asked me. You know me. I will be honest. I'm going to paint mind. Which, and you thought, how are you going to do that? Well, it's formless. So I'm going to make a formless painting. I'm going to try and represent the background. What some might call Buddha nature, some might call self-mind or something, you know. And I'm kind of thinking of the sun with when the sun and you get those magnetic emissions on the magnetic wave bands, you get sunspots and little explosions, and thoughts are like that. So thoughts are material bursts of this spiritual thing. They're almost material in a way, you know, and just thinking of they appear and they disappear. And so get some basic kind of orangey, whitey kind of warm, all-pervasive thin texture with these offshoots, you know, which just makes me think, because you've got a lot of time to ponder this stuff in lockdown about how your mind works. If you sit quietly and you know, you're calm, and then you get an anxious thought or something comes, and you think, oh, look at the thought, and where did it come from? Where does it go to? You know, so it will be something along those lines. So it'll be a therapeutic expressing, working some shit out at that level, whatever that means, you know. Yeah, not the kind of thing, if you took me back to the East End when I was drinking in the 70s and say, go and tell those blokes in there about your future self and how you're going to paint mine in a suburban garden, because they probably want to you know, throw beer on you or something. It wouldn't have gone down well, you know.
Yeah, but you got to enter your base, though, didn't you? So it's the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that become the way I, you know, yeah, that become the saviour for me, because at that time I was talking about this to somebody the other day, and I really don't know what would become of me, because I was a square peg in a round hole. 18 years of age or something there, 17, 18, around that time, living in squats. I'd gone just before Peel happened, before Johnny asked me to join it. I was back home on sufferance. I'd come back at the Christmas, and there we were in the March already. And my old man saying, oh, you're still here. That's funny. You're not giving me 20 quid a week, and that's what you're supposed to off again. So I was off again. So Johnny come up, and I was able to get 60 quid a week at least to start with. He'll give them 20. But apart from all that, it actually gave me, I could play a bit. Funny enough, I'd spent a lot of time on my own, in a way you might do in lockdown. You'd go off on your own, sit in the back of the garden and play or whatever, you know. And I was left in a squat in the borough because the people I shared with had got so fed up with me because I set fire to furniture that wasn't mine to keep warm, like a Young One script, but it was for real. We did do that. I'd done it with a bloke called Vince Bracken, whose mum died of COVID last week, unfortunately. Yeah. You know, she's the first one I knew that God bless her, you know. And a guy called Brian the Ted, and we were freezing, and we chopped the furniture up. So it was toxic, a lot of the wood and the laminate on it. It was so stupid, and it, you know, so it made a lot of like toxic smoke, and the people who owned the furniture weren't happy, you know, and it ended up with a brawl in a North London public house. Quite right, they were quite a bad brawl, but I was out of order, and you know, and that's what happened. But so we ended up having a brawl bout with a guy, but we were friends after. The guy who owned it is a lovely guy, a really nice person actually, you know, who a good guy. And anyway, but I ended up on my own and practicing bass quite intently and thinking deeply about things. And that's why, don't get me wrong, I don't underestimate COVID. I don't want it, because I've known a few that have had it out of London. I've not had anyone yet said, I think I had it and it weren't bad. Everyone said, I think I had it, it was terrible. You know, a guy that accountants had it, and he's had it really bad. He's had it for like 5 weeks, still in bed. You know, so and then there's the ones who have been on ventilators. So it's, everyone says, oh, it's only 1%. Like, it's like, well, as my missus was told when we knew what was going on in China, as somebody said to her there, she said, is it really bad? And they said, you don't want to get it. That was some medic said to her, you don't want to get it, because I think they're realising this is got all kinds of effects on the body. But anyway, whatever, I died. Back to me, that'd be far more interesting. But so I spent a lot of time practicing and thinking hard about bass and what you would do with this bass and what I wanted to do. And I found punk music quite conservative, really. I realised looking back, I find it a bit one-dimensional and a bit uninspiring. Guitars leading the way, you know, and, you know, bog standard rock and roll. It was very conservative, and the music was mismatched with the attitude, because the attitude was quite boundaryless and quite brave, And it was actually, that's why I've got that, my little theory is, you know, music movements follow on 30 years after the visual art. So the Impressionists, you probably had Debussy and Berlioz probably 30 years after the Monet and everything. You know, it tends to be 25, 30 odd years after. And I think we, post-punk artists, so-called, had the sensibility of the abstract expressionists, your Pollocks and people, you know, that kind of. And I was thinking in a very abstract way. And I was thinking of you know, where, you know, what does the bass do? And you have the bass at the base of it. And I'm thinking of the painting in a minute, actually. You know, these abstract shapes of how you're painting these abstract shapes. And you're not thinking of a D7 chord to, you know, a minor, you know, going into an A minor chord, into, you know, you're not thinking left to right. You're not thinking of a narrative. You're thinking of a total thing. And that very quickly became apparent in Peel, because we very quickly went down that line. And it was about, there's something about expressionist art, you know, especially it was getting straight to it, you know, you get that, you have fuck the technique, it's about the feeling and the intensity of the paint on the canvas, you know.
Where are you? You've disappeared.
Sorry, yeah. Phone call coming. Sorry, mate. Yeah, he might have phoned me. I phoned my mate earlier. I need to talk about something, to find out something, if we think it'll be on or not. And I'm saying, we got to talk. But he phones me and I cut it off. You know, I'll call him back in a minute. But yes, so in the same way that I was thinking about, you know, you could think of me thinking of painting a picture tonight. That's how I was thinking then. It was very, and I was on my own thinking music should be like this, that, the other. I wasn't in any bands, because I think that, yeah, that weird thing where you've got a lack of self-esteem in a way. You're frightened of rejection, but at the same time, there's an arrogance there that you think you're smarter in a way than the other. So you don't even talk to people about it because you think they won't understand what you mean. And with Peel, actually, Levine kind of would get it. You didn't need to say too much. And there was a thing with Keith, looking back, that was kind of, you know, there's a kind of, you don't say this, but it's as if you said, well, we can do this, which we've done that, and we can take it to there. And then at the second album, you take it there, and then you can take it there. But it's like, oh, fuck it, let's just go there. You know, beyond all moral constraints, you know, like Apocalypse Now. Let's go beyond all moral constraint now. You know, let's just do it now.
That's what you
let's
did.
Just go, and just go and make something that's completely kind of raw and real, and that's it. You know, yeah.
So have you been doing much reading during the lockdown?
No, not really. A bit, well, Buddhist kind of stuff. So I read Dharma. I like to try and work the Dharma. So yeah, I mean, you know, this is, you want to be a Buddha? You know, that's your basic fit textbook, and Popper. You know, the dual law of liberation. That's basically, that's your manual in every, for moral behaviour, for meditation practice. That's your man. So yeah, that's like as in a manual. There's another book I'm reading. Let's have a look here. This is on Kindle, and this is I'll get it up, the actual part of it. This one, the bottom corner anyway, it's called, and that's about non-league football. So I've got that on the and then I'll do audio books. So I've got on the path to enlightenment, you know, another Buddhist thing. But I've got Learn Spanish with Paul Noble, and Isaac. What's the guy? Jewish guy that I've been, Shadows on the Hudson, and that's Isaac Bashevis, which is really good. You know, there's a lot. You know, what are you? I said to him, "You're crazy. You got a lot of this." You know, it's very Jewish kind of thing. It's great. And what else? There's a couple of things there. Other things. So, The Boy on the Shed by Paul Ferris, which is a guy that was a really good footballer that got injured and went on to be a really good physio. And I've been getting stuck into that as well. So, and then I've got some other blogs I've downloaded, or some kind of blog recently about Putin, which I find him quite interesting. Apparently I look like him, people tell me, or whatever.
You do, actually.
So I've got, Yeah, that's what they say. Yeah, I am like beauty. You know, I mean, I find him a fascinating bloke. He's very intense bloke, and whenever I hear him, I just think, God, you've really grown into this job. I'm not endorsing him, you know, but you think you've really grown into this job, and you are just so much smarter and more cunning and more ruthless than the likes of Boris Johnson and Trump. And my God, you're playing a blinder, old son, in terms of weakening the West, strengthening ties with China. You are a smart. You are a formidable bloody man, Putin. Formidable man. You know, as I say, not an endorsement. You know, a formidable guy.
Fascination with how he operates, like he's the dictator's dictator.
Well, you know, I mean, I guess he really got the ump with how Russia was, you know, with the fall of the wall, and thought, right, okay then. And it's a bit like, you know, to use a football analogy, you know, it's like Wimbledon, AFC Wimbledon. I'm totally comparing AFC Wimbledon to Putin and the reformation of the Russian state. You know, for comparing that to Wimbledon, I'm just listening to myself. But, you know, they end up losing, their club gets franchised off, goes to Milton Keynes. They're left without a club. They form kickabouts as trials on Wimbledon Common and end up back in the Football League. A decade later, it's like, wow, that is something, you know, and you've just come back all the way to be very strong, you know. So there you go, you know. I mean, it's a funny now time that, you know, democracy, you know, I think with people, everyone's talking about democracy now. The whole thing that happened with Brexit, both with people like Steve Bannon on that side of the Atlantic, Cummings on this side of the Atlantic, and yet you'd think all this stuff was clear to see formulating over the last 2 or 3 decades. Very clear, you know, disenfranchisement of the labour working class. You know, if you read the Republic, you kind of think Plato kind of understood a thing or two. Democracy breaks apart, becomes plutocracy, which we've had. You know, Trump's a plutocrat, really, you know, rich guy. And we're already now, you know, we're already past plutocracy going into authoritarianism now, you know, it's how it is, you know. And democratic states will be few and far between, I fear, you know. Be interesting to see. God knows what's going to happen in the next few years. There's a really good writer called Morris Berman, not very well known, but he wrote a book called Dark Ages America. And he talked about how the West would go under, and, you know, it was on the way out. And it was just a question of whether it was 10 years or 50 years, you know. Yeah.
And do you think...
Anyway, that's worth that. And that was 2003 or something, you know.
And the virus has accelerated that.
Yeah, well, a mate of mine said, how did you know? You know, because I'm an end of the world. For me, it's the end of Western civilization. This is the fall of Rome. So when you have the fall of Rome, you have barbarians at the gate. We've got that in various ways. You know, in 1 or 2 other European countries, you've got, you know, leaders who might be seen as, you know, being at the gates, possibly, of democracy, if you know what I mean. You know, you've got various kinds of barbarians at the gates. You've got, and at the end, you have pestilence, and you have floods, and you have fire, you know. And it's over. And you just, you know, everything that comes apart and seems will last forever, all composites break apart eventually. And I was very lucky. We were very spoilt, my generation, I think, you know, in some respects. We grew up in a very stable, static world simply because it was a reaction. Our parents and, you know, the generation before us had gone through the war. They'd had this old Etonian great wartime leader, supposedly Churchill. Everyone forgets some of the blunders he made. You know, before the Second World War, you know, that I would sort of think, the Sydney Street Siege, maybe a different way of handling that, possibly. Gallipoli, I think he was involved, maybe, you know. But great was charismatic, made great speeches, great oratory, but then got kicked out on his arse, didn't he? And it was Attlee, I think, you know, after the war. And then, of course, from there, they just had enough by then. I mean, the guy I'm named after drowned of complications after nearly drowning and had pneumonia. So it was a lung thing, wasn't treated correctly in the Poplar Hospital, which was really a hospital for dockers. But he'd been taken in there. you didn't have the NHS at that time, and people wanted decent health, decent housing, and they weren't. It was going to all change, and so I grew up, and they were sick of violence because they hadn't been on football terraces going, "Come on in, do you want some? Come on in. Let's have all this nonsense." They'd actually been shot at and killed people, and seen their best mates get blown apart and terribly injured and all that. They're sick of violence. They'd know proper soldiers. If you ever meet them, they never have any illusion, that I don't think, about who they've kind of been fighting for. They're fighting for each other, and they've seen things, and actually a lot of the time, they really don't want to see that again, and they don't want their kids to see it if possible. And anyway, so I grew up. Obviously it was a tough environment, and you got smacked around the head if you did anything wrong, etc., etc. But it was stable, and of course you had the caring state. You had a national health system, and you had all that, and it was very fixed, stable position in a bigger, stable world where you had the Russians the other side of the Iron Curtain, Chinese the other side of the bamboo curtain, and we were the West. New York was the centre of the Empire of America, and and it was stable, and you weren't likely. There was the threat of nuclear war, but you weren't likely to kind of be invaded. It was everyone had enough of that, and they had their fixed lines, so everything was static and peaceful. And it was one of those periods, maybe like the 6th century under the Romans or whatever, when it was the Romans, whatever century it was, when the Romans had been here a while, and Romano Britain was up and running, everyone kind of rubbed up the right way, and for 100 years or so, I think it was quite peaceful, and everything, and so we gained from that. And at some point that's going to change. In my own cowardly, selfish way, I knew it's going to change, but you're thinking, oh, please let it happen after I peg it. So, because I don't want to see any of this shit. Because I'm a coward, and I'm, my tendency, it's why it's good for me to practice Buddhism and try and get a little bit of loving kindness going, is very much women, children, and Jah Wobble to the lifeboats first. If it's Titanic,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. So, and but my fear is, in my old age, I don't want to see a load of grief, but you're probably going to, and I felt that for a while. I felt quite comfortable. I felt absolutely certain, going back the last year or two, events would overtake us all. Apart from Brexit and that nonsense, events would overtake us all, one way or the other. If it's not this, it's a Japanese fighter plane gets shot down over the Chinese Sea, and there's some heavy, stuff, and hey, that could still come, that kind of thing, These things tend to be like buses. It's one after the other, Yeah.
The virus adds to this.
Perfect storm, mate. And you've got an old duffer like Boris Johnson, who for me is a blagger, in control. He's been able to get there, and Brexit happened to happen because you've got someone like Jeremy Corbyn, so an ideologue who's not a high-grade guy, and all these people. It's like when your football club's struggling and you have a number 10 who's not really world-class, but you all convince yourself that he's world class because you just want to not feel so bad about your football club, And that's another thing I feel bad about Tottenham, with the thing of furloughing the non-playing staff. And you think, what, Tottenham, you're kind of becoming, you've made yourself a brand, and in my eyes, you're becoming a tainted brand. So I'm getting more and more fed up with them. I just think, God, I don't even want to think about Tottenham at the moment because it makes me sick, to be honest. Yeah.
Is that why you read the non-league football book?
Well, I like non-league.
Yeah.
I always liked lower league football. I always liked going to the Orient when I was younger. You'd pop in to see them Orient play once in a while, and you'd go and see one or two up and go, you love football. And up here, I went to see County play very early on. They were league teams still, to be fair, but I've seen them in non-league. And my boy, he was a good footballer. And he ended up in non-league very young in the first team at 16. And so I got to know a lot of the non-league grounds up there watching him. And I love it, the cup of tea, the tea shack, and some of these grounds, I'd go up to the lady in the shack and say, yes, I'd like a latte. I would like it quite weak. And I would like it with hundreds of thousands on it. And they're just looking at you. And I would like as well just little bits of chocolate sauce on that. And they look at you like, I say, it's all right, love. Just a cup of tea, do 3 sugars, thanks. You know, and everyone's having a laugh. It's great, you know. And reading that book's great because one of the things when you go to those grounds is they're going to have a deep fryer. Are there enough people to warrant chips? Because you really want chips. And that would often be the preoccupation with me. Will the chips be? Because I love chips. I've got a deep fat fryer here. Got one in the kitchen, you know. She hates it, my missus. But my mother-in-law likes it because she does deep fried dumplings and stuff, you know, dim sum. So I love all that. But I want my chips to be going, you know. So, you know, yeah. You know, so anyway, that was it. That'd be my fear. And it was like, oh, no, there's not chips. But you can have a burger. And it's like, but I want chips. Yeah. You know. So anyway, Formica tables and all that. So I like non-league. I like non-league football. There's an honesty to it and some very good players as you go down the pyramid. There's lots of stories of guys who got injured at the wrong time, were just, you know, got the wrong contract at the wrong time and ended up in non-league. And, you know, some fabulous, every game there'll be 1 or 2 fabulous players. It'll be a right back, like, who's this guy? Or a number 9. Wow, who's this guy? You know, great football. You know, yeah, I think he's big boy because he ended up at county. He was at York and he was full time. He was, you know, not long after he left school, professional. But then he's doing well. I think he's number 1 what it means. Number 1 listened artist in the Northwest on Spotify. Like last night, he's got a record just come out, and he's GZTN. He works under, but he does all different things. But he loved it. He said to me, Dad, you know, like, I'm really feeling, I'm drawn with music. And my oldest boy, we all make music. You know, we've got a family album coming out. And I said, if you're going to ask me, don't think I'm going to have the if you stop playing football, because sport always ends up frustrating you. You know, I play football still. I started playing again a year or 2 ago. And you think of the one you missed. You think of the chances you missed, not the ones you buried. And you're never quite good enough, you know. You always want to be a bit better. With music, you have a drive for it, but it expands your mind. It brings joy, you know, and that's the arts. And somebody made a good point on Twitter, you know, the last few years with schools, it's all, you know, we should concentrate on business. And, you know, business, and we should cut on the sciences. And science is great, although we tend to make it like, well, the government is science-led, like all scientists are in accord, like it's this fixed thing, science, and they deal with empirical facts, and therefore they're the best people. The bollocks. You know, science is great, and you listen, but all these scientists have all got different opinions, so it's always political. Small and large P with scientists anyway, so you can't separate all that, you know. But somebody sort of said, isn't it funny? All the crap subjects that schools don't want to do anymore are the ones everyone's studying. Art, languages, you know, music. This is what you do. This is when you're stuck in your cave and you get a bit of chalk and you draw a picture of the deer or the light. You paint the animals that you're hunting and the animals that are hunting you, or whatever, you know. You try and make sense of the world. You know what I mean? You know. Yeah.
In all this time, if you've got much time left, are you actually watching much TV, films, or anything like that?
Yeah. Better Call Saul, which I love, is fantastic. So Netflix, Ozark, which is pretty good. A lot of stuff on Netflix, the series, you think, yeah, I can see. Sometimes I can see why this probably didn't make it to HBO with some series. But Ozark is one, started out good, sagged a bit, and then it's like they found their stride, and that's as good as anything. That's a really good, interesting thing. So still the American renaissance of TV, you know, is fantastic. Homeland is really good. So, you know, Homeland and Death of Stalin, I saw recently, a bit after everyone. I thought that was fantastic. But in the lockdown, yeah, they're the main. Homeland, Ozark, Better Call Saul, they're the main things that I'm kind of going for, you know.
Great.
What about you, John? What you been watching?
I don't really watch much telly. I'm usually like, I'm writing a couple of books. And
oh, you're always busy. Yeah, you're always working.
Yeah, there's a lot of music on because now with this, where we're at now, you can actually send files backwards and forwards. You can co-write with people all over the world. It's actually quite a good time to be a musician.
Yeah. I'm not. This is when all this happened. You know, it's you know, obviously you don't want it to happen as such, but part of me, I'd be lying if I said didn't welcome it. I've lost a lot of money, a lot of shows cancelled, all that stuff. But in a way, I always dream of the merry-go-round stopping.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just stopping and being static. You know, like I'm talking. You know, where you're static and you can do some of the stuff that you've been wanting to do, and you can stop and you can properly take stock. And to be honest, the world's, I think we all know, for the last, increasingly, since about 96, I'd say for sure, I felt post-Thatcher and all that, we got to 96, just before Blair came to power, we'd had you know, John Smith had died, and Kinnock got defeated when we thought he'd win, and Major got in, who wasn't the worst guy in the world, but basically there wasn't much difference between New Labour and the Tories. It was the kind of, you know, neoliberal thing. So I never voted for Blair. I'm not saying I didn't think a lot of the policies were good and it was better than having a Tory. I'm not saying that, but it wasn't for me. You know, I felt it was like a middle class thing. We'd all been kind of left behind and everything. You know, I felt that's the way it kind of gone. But it was about 96. I just thought, this is now not funny anymore. You know, this is now just not funny. Everything that's happened, it's not funny anymore. This is really felt terrible for me. Was a working class guy in the East End with all these new people coming in, and the attitude to, we were like the kind of unwashed sort of, you know, Neanderthals or something. It was a funny way, the way you were treated. It just felt really wrong. And you just looked at the world with that, what had started with American Psycho, if you like, you know, that kind of Eastern thing, you know, of these, you know, kind of psychopathic kind of business people, you know, that kind of, you know, Wall Street kind of brokers and these kind of guys in the city of London, you know, really, you know, just money and, you know, and all that, and, you know, unrestrained capitalism and everything. And, you know, I just felt this is just can't go on like this. This is absolutely just mad. It just felt like a dream world that it's a dream that will all be woken from abruptly. So I remember being convinced at that point that the banking system would have to collapse. Not because I'm an expert, you just think that everyone's living on tick. It just does not going to work. Betting industries freed up increasingly over the last couple of decades, you know, to the point where you think, well, all these stuff in the 20s and 30s was regulated for a reason, because you had to kind of keep the genie in the bottle a bit, you know, you couldn't let it out. And a lot of the lessons that even conservatives like Ted Heath learned in the 30s, they realised how terrible poverty was, and they knew you couldn't have that. Thatcher didn't have that fear. She wasn't bothered with any of that, because we're going to reform the world. Overconfident kind of right-wing conservatism, like the Brexiteers, overconfident, you know, empty vessels. So they're the worst people to have in control now. When you've got this kind of crisis, they're not up to very much. These people, you know, they're not very bright and they're not very nice, you know. And the politicians had seen what had happened in the 20s and 30s, had compassion. So they knew you just didn't want that back again. So even the Tories were kind of knew that you had to have some kind of, so you can't free everything up, because you create winners, you'll create more losers, and you'll create underclasses and stuff, you know. And so I kind of felt a banking crash would happen by 2003. It was actually 2008, you know, it was a bit later. Thought it would be worse than it was, thought it'd be, and it wreaked a lot of damage, as we know, you know. I thought it would be even worse. And then I've just been thinking all the way along, something's going to happen. Brexit was, even I couldn't see that, because that is really stupid. So that's a big deal. Someone like Trump getting to power is just incredible, really. You know, when you look at the things he says, you think, wow, you know, look, you know, that is just unbelievable for somebody to say that was the president of the United States, you know, for me. You know, it's just crazy, you know. And, you know, you're just waiting, and you just know the way this works, you know, as these bad things happen, they'll come in groups, because it's like a perfect storm. You're going to have all kinds of crazy things happening and crazy things to contend with on, you know, that's how it's going to be, you know. And you could feel that, you know, very strongly this last couple of years. And it grew and grew. And so the point comes, anyway, the merry-go-round stops, and you think, you know, things have to change. You know, I think the way this country's run with the class system, it's just ludicrous. It's just ludicrous. I look at those press conferences, and even the podiums look too Bob. You know, these podiums that they're behind, you know, with the little yellow and red stickers on the front. It's all just too Bob. You look at a bloke like Cummings, Dominic Cummings, and you think, who are you? He's an arrogant kind of persona. Who are you? Who is this guy? You know, you know, who's been taken by a couple of books that he's read, you know, and then everyone has to go off and read these books on systems kind of analysis or something, you know, and it's like, oh, God help me, you know. And you just think, can we just have some sensible men and women back, you know? And even me, I must admit, you look at the world, New Zealand, you know, and other countries where even Merkel, God forbid, you know, the countries with the best response to this pandemic are run by women. And you do think, you know, I mean, maybe women just tend to have a little bit more the motherly, compassionate thing. I know there's exceptions to it, you know, generalise too much, but I did kind of think, wow, it's quite a list of countries run by women where the response has actually been quite sensible. Maybe it's some new age, you know, what's after it. I think the age of Aquarius is on the way out, so I'm not even sure, but maybe this is the age of the woman or something. It's, you know, because you can't go on the way it is with money, you know. People have to accept, you know, if you're going to have money, you're going to have to pay more taxes, and maybe we lower our expectations a bit. You don't need that much. I mean, there's times I've earned good money over the years compared to, I know that, you know, and you've got it, and you stay at nice places. There's only so many 5-star hotels you can stay at, when in the end, it's just a fucking room. You know, at the end of the day, it's just a room, you know, and they've got that sort of subdued lighting, but it's just a fucking room, and it just is what it is.
4 hours,
you know. So, yeah. There's only so many pairs of shoes you can wear. So we need, and that's one of the things that I didn't like, the way everyone takes 2 or 3 holidays a year, you know. And you do, I'm not particularly, I'm old and I'm set in my ways. I'm not a particularly green kind of guy. I've got a big old Jag that I drive. Well, I don't drive now, you know. But you can't just, it's not feasible just to bomb down the airport and go off to, you know, fly off to Southern Europe 5 times a year. It's just none of that's kind of sustainable, you know. And there's a humility that I miss in the 70s with people where, you know, I think this is one thing post-Brexit will go, but if you watch old scripts of Minder or the Sweeney with Minder, which I never really liked that much at the time, I found it a bit corny, but whatever. The plots generally are, like, Terry's mate comes round, right, and wants Terry to go and move some furniture. So Terry goes round there because he's a good bloke and he's going to get a tenner, but it only turns out that the furniture's nicked, innit? Oh no! And it ends up round Arthur's lock-up, right? And Mr. Chisholm comes looking, and Mr. Chisholm's actually sitting on the stuff that Arthur's got, and Terry's going to get nicked because he wants to nick Terry because he thinks Terry's at it. But they managed to kind of get it back, and Terry gets paid anyway. And basically the whole plot of it is everyone trying to nick 20 quid for themselves out of 50 quid, right? And it's like, yeah, and that's kind of what life was like in the 70s. Like, you know, it was about nicking 50 quid and getting your 20 quid out of that 50 quid before the geezer spent it. And that's what it was about. And in a way, there's something comforting about that, you know. I live in Shadwell. I pay £8.50 a week, which I think I was paying when I first moved in there. I need to earn like £25 a week or whatever it was, you know. You need to earn this to survive, to pay. And it was fine. And just having a roof over your head, that was, you know, and having a security of tenure that you had then with council properties, you know. And it's about people not living in fear, you know. So let's design out. I've got high hopes, maybe I shouldn't have, with Starmer. I think he's, you know, I know, you know, whenever you mention a left-wing politician that you like, but straight away, he's not even left-wing, you know. But I've got high hopes he might do something, you know. You know, I liked last Glenda Jackson. I felt would have made a great leader, you know. I bet she was backbencher, you know. I liked that Johnson guy. I thought was a decent guy, you know. But you just whatever, even at Sowbury. I mean, and I'm very aware. Everyone, Ken Clarke become everybody's favourite Tory. He was a Thatcherite. If you look at the way their voting record was never that great. They are Tories, and they're not they're not your friends, I'm afraid. You know, they're nice. They're not really your friend of you or your class. But even the Sowerberries and the Clarks, you know, you kind of think, God give you that. They were like suddenly, or even Heseltine. Can you believe it? Even Heseltine was like a gargantuan statesman. What he was saying about Brexit, you know, that was also crazy. But hopefully, we can just cry out for some ordinary man and woman to come back and run things. Just some nice, ordinary person. But of course, good. That's the trouble. The last 3 decades, good, capable men and women have been sidelined and marginalised, and they just don't want the grief, you know.
Yeah, it's like being the England manager.
Yeah, it's a poison chalice. Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
But it's a chalice they've poisoned. That's the problem. Yeah.
Well, the media here obviously have got a lot, you know, they've got a curious position here, and I suspect that some of the media barons here were probably not allowed leeway into Europe. I don't know for sure, but I suspect that's one of the reasons why they didn't like the EU. And I think a lot of the richer people here, I think some of the well-known kind of politicians even have got a quid or two as well, you know, probably didn't like the EU because they're you know, not as into, you know, letting companies and individuals put their money away into tax havens, you know, possibly, you know. I've got no illusions about the EU either, you know, whenever I think the EU, I kind of think of, you know, what happened with Greece, and they're just business. It's just business. But you have to realise that, and you have to deal. They're the nearest neighbours. You need to be tough when you do business, but you need to kind of realise you've actually got a bit of power, and you need to be constructive. This is not a time anyway, even pre-coronavirus, to crack out on your little rowing boat with elderly people rowing in overconfident fashion. We'll be all right. We'll find out somewhere because we're English. You know, not the time to do it. You know. But, yeah.
Well, we can always do trade deals with China.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, everyone nowadays said they're going to take lawsuits out on China, and you know, you just think you might do well to look back. I'm not. You know, it's a different kind of society. It's authoritarian. I happen to know it's not as bad as what a lot of people paint it, in my view, for most Chinese people. They've actually got, you know, good pensions and, you know, and a secure life, actually, you know. So, you know, one should be careful to find. I'm not, as I say, it's a different kind of society. But one thing with the Chinese, you have to remember, going back not so long ago, they suffered terribly with imperial powers, with the Opium Wars. You know, be careful about kind of like stealing in their high and mighty, because it has got this thing, we are the West and we're going to reassert ourselves, and you're not going to get ahead of us. And the trouble is the Chinese are so ahead already in many ways. You know, they're trading so efficiently into Africa, and you know, they're for what, obviously some people would probably say by stealth. And it's probably the old colonialists, well, we'll lend you this, you know, we'll develop your infrastructure, but you owe us for it, you know, and then they've probably got leverage and this, that, and the other. I'm not an expert on it, but, you know, one thing I know for sure, you should be careful, you know, the country, not that long ago, you had the Opium Wars, and you just think, it was a huge humiliation, you know, and so you want to kind of try and deal with this stuff skillfully, but that's like Brexit shouldn't happen. You should deal with the EU skillfully. But of course, all these people have got this term came in to be disruptive. The disruptors of the market, right? So the president of the United States appears like a disruptor, you know, and it's kind of easy to be. It's much easier to be a disruptor than to show patience and skillful means, really, in terms of dealing with stuff, you know. And as I say, I've got no illusions about the EU. I'm not, they're so nice, I'm going to wave a little EU flag, you know. None at all, you know. It's business. And you're always going to have that dichotomy between Northern Europe and Southern Europe, agricultural, sunny, laid-back countries versus your industrial powerhouse kind of, you know, Calvinistic kind of, you know, clear. And the Germans, look, I love them. You know, I work with Jackie and Olga. They're efficient. They're logical. What other country in the world is going to give a masterclass like in how to deal with COVID? You know, contain, test ruthlessly, you know, intelligently. You just think, oh, God, the Germans just, you know. Sorry, mate.
Country run by a scientist. She's a scientist.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. I mean, she kind of something about her kind of bothers me, you know, because there's a weird. What bothers there is a kind of weird ideology there of sorts, you know, that I sometimes feel with that weird kind of 60s thing of, you know, not really kind of being unhappy with your mum and dad somehow, and then transferring that over into how you kind of run society, and it all gets very kind of very German, you know, it's very deep. There's that Berlin, which is another of these that's really fantastic, another of these kind of Sky Atlantic things that's brilliant, you know. But you know, yeah, it does kind of something about it kind of worries me, but a very efficient response to it. It's just very logical, and we had a lot of time here to prepare for this, you know. So we knew a little bit just through, you know, my older boy was right in a city next to Wuhan when it all broke out. So the in-laws kind of said, "You better move. You know, there's something going on there." So yeah, he did. He got on his bike. You know, they got the train out and his girlfriend and got back, and it's all good. You know, but we kind of were hearing, oh, this ain't flu. You know, this is like a weird, serious thing, and the word was out there. And you know, all these countries are supposed to have pandemic. You know. Everyone knows that's a real threat, you know. You know, every 100 years or so, you're probably going to get a heavy one. And we've had warning shots with SARS and Ebola, you know. So you can't tell me. I mean, I went down to my thing. I do like a community thing. I'd started in South London, and at the beginning of March, we come back from gigging, and I went down there, and that week we did gigs, and I did feel, God, you know, we shouldn't be doing this. And my missus said, "What's going to happen here? Don't even know how serious it is." And I said to her, "Well, I hear you, but this government, you can guarantee, won't work speedily and effectively. There'll be a kind of stupidity and a bluff, and you've got a guy that thinks he can bluff everything and be charming, and that's old Etonians. There can be a terrible lack of substance there, you know. There's a real lack of empathy, and, you know, even with the way he was talking about shaking hands with COVID, you know, people that had coronavirus, which is just a stupid thing to say, you know. And his dad was talking about going down the pub, and some people are surprised, and you think, well, I'm not, because for that class, the rules are for the plebs, not for them. Yeah, the plebs follow the rules, not them, you know. But, you know, I'm sitting here saying all this, and if you go on Twitter, I see you on Twitter, it's the only social media I do, and you'd think the whole country's in uproar about it, but they're not. The majority of people will, you know, good old Boris. And, you know, I think the last year, again, one of the things happened in all this time over the last 3 decades or so, post-Thatcher, and obviously I was on the picket line with Murdoch. I didn't think a guy like Murdoch should be, you know, I felt should be restricted, was my view. You know, there should be restrictions on who own newspapers. You need some restrictions in society by the state, you know. You know, and I believe in nationalised railways, all that. You know, I am kind of, you know, a bit of a socialist, but I also know you've got that, you know, I'm a bit entrepreneurial myself. You can't over-regulate. It's obviously a skillful balancing act, probably the way the Germans do to an extent, you know. But I think because of that kind of media, when you've got a newspaper like The Sun, you're going to end up with stupid people. And I'm afraid you end up with people that are just a bit, you know, you've got The Sun, the Daily Mail, and you're what they say daft and a lot of the time. And you get some journalists you look at, you know, you see on Twitter, and you just think, wow, do you really mean this? Or is it just because you're employed by these people that but you seem like you really believe this? And it's just something very unpleasant that's come to the surface. And don't get me wrong, the PC mob are just as ridiculous, you know. So I suppose I'm a centralist dad, and of course, it's really not hip to be sensible and in the middle now. You've got to be really extreme, you know. And it's like, well, yeah, tell me that when you're on the at the barricades with bricks flying. I wonder. You feel right behind the keyboard, but when it's out there and it's really tasty, I bet you won't be anywhere to be seen. You know,
like a radical centrist.
Yeah. So I'm hoping they'll. Yeah, I'm hoping there'll be. What's that, John? Sorry, I missed that.
Hard centre, like hard left, hard right, hard centre.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hard centre actually, to me, you know, Marshal Tito, Yugoslavia, you know, that kind of, you will all get along, you know, and if I say, right, you will all get along, you know. But we see, I mean, anything that happened, you know, with all this on the back of, I haven't heard any, I know there were this Nightingale Hospital, there were supposedly shortages of staff. It was reported in some media outlets. I don't know how true that is. But you think, well, why is that? Why aren't there enough nurses? Something to do with Brexit? It wouldn't surprise me. And yet again, that wouldn't be publicised. But you've got to think if there's any shortage of staff, it will be because of Brexit. You know?
It's causing problems.
You know? And of course, we're now seeing how important all these foreign nationals are to us, for fuck's sake. You know, God, we need these people. And I was in hospital about 3 years ago. I got took in. I went into some tests. They kept me in, and I did actually say to them, but you can't keep me in because it's my birthday. And then another voice said, you're being a daft old man. There's no rule that says you can't go in hospital on your birthday. It's a bit of a shitty thing, but there you go. So, you know, and, you know, you get these people all over the world. And the NHS is terrific. So we all clap them now. There's same people that's cheering when they didn't get their pay rise, which does stand in my mind. You know, at the time I just thought, you're a nasty bunch of people. But hey, let's say about this country, you know, about 30% of the country roughly is conservatives. Small c, large c, they are. You know, and it's their country as well. But they are. It was like that at the time of Thatcher, and it's like it now. Yeah.